Once again, we're taping in the historical series of oral history for the State Department of Libraries in Frankfort, for the Pogue Oral History Library at Murray State University, and WCBL Radio. Shelby McCallum is paying for a copy to go to the Marshall County Public Library. I'm Ray Mofield, and we're honored to have as a guest today Valley Trevathan. Miss Valley Combs Trevathan, I believe it was, has been a Marshall County in much of her life. If she weren't born here, I don't know, she might have been born in Callaway County. But you were awfully close to Hardin, weren't you?
Oh, yeah.
Up around Almo?
No, about halfway between Almo and Dexter.
Uh-huh.
On a big farm.
And, of course, your beloved husband was Ben Loman Trevathan.
That's right.
And we're so pleased to have you. Do you mind telling us when you were born?
Not a bit. 1898, February 16th.
February 16th, 1898. You'll
if
be
you
having...
remember, there's a big ship sunk in the Mexican War down 15th, and it's just before midnight that it sunk.
Oh, the
And
Battleship Maine.
Battleship Maine.
Yeah, well, what a historical coincidence. Now, for the benefit of our genealogists, Miss Valley, and we have a lot of them these days, we'd like to sort of establish a little bit more about your genealogy. Now, you were a Combs.
That's right.
Tell us your father's name.
George Allen Combs.
George Allen, and your mother?
She was a Kennedy.
A Kennedy,
Her
another
father
famous name.
was Charles Kennedy, an old-time Presbyterian preacher.
Mm-hmm. All right,
He established a church over in this county. It was on his farm.
Wouldn't have been Unity, would it?
That's right.
Well, what do you know? I'm very familiar with that. My dad was from that general neighborhood. And I've had some relatives who are members there, such as my Aunt Vera.
And my mother was a Clayton.
Your mother was a Clayton?
My grandmother was a
Yes,
Clayton.
okay. Well, that's another rather noted name around the Hardin area, and I suppose maybe all over the country for that matter.
Well, of course, he went here and there preaching to other congregations,
Mm-hmm.
but that was on his grandfather, I believe his grandfather's farm, because he was a preacher, and he went all around. He didn't go to the war,
Mm-hmm.
and his sons, he only had one son old enough, and he didn't go. He was crippled-like. And they had a big family. And at that time, it kept the boys busy trying to keep the scavengers from the army, from the North Army.
Well, that's during the
Steal their
war
horses.
war between the states.
Mhm.
Yes.
Steal their horses. So after that, then, he finally moved to Dexter. And my daddy had lived in below Paducah, and he had hay fever. You may remember seeing him wear one of those sponges over his nose here. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But he went when he was 16 years old. He ran away from home and made his way to Texas. And in Texas, he worked on a big ranch for a long time. He drove the wagon that took the food around to the ranchers' hands.
He had quite an adventure, didn't he?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came back home then, and when he went back, he had a line. He worked with liver stables then for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And he ran a Phaeton-like business, and he'd put in one liver stable, and he'd take them from Dallas to
Fort Worth?
Fort Worth
Mm-hmm.
by that carriage. He'd meet the train to Dallas and take them to Fort Worth, and then go get them. When they wanted to go back, he'd take them back. The train didn't run then from any further than Fort Worth, so he took them to Fort Worth to Dallas and back. Then he came home when he was about 24 years old, and he met my mother, saw her walking down the street there in Dexter, and he said, "There goes my wife," to his half-brother, John Morris.
Well, it was love at first sight,
That's
indeed.
right.
Yeah.
And then he bought the farm that
He
the old
He got
cemetery.
acquainted with her, and he did marry
They
her.
married.
Yeah.
But my grandfather and grandmother both died before I was born, so I don't remember seeing any of my grandfathers and mothers.
All that comes from the records.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
that's certainly an interesting story. That's the type of thing we
I
like
lived
to
on
hear.
that farm until I was about 10 years old and moved to Hardin.
Was there any particular reason why your dad wanted to go to Hardin?
Yes, sir. He wanted to put me in school.
They had built
I'd already got out of all the
common
small,
school,
the
yeah.
common school,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't have any but at Murray and at Hardin.
There
And
was
he decided he wanted to go to Hardin, and he went to Hardin and bought a house and fixed it up and moved us down there in January.
and Hardin High School opened in
Hardin
the
High
fall of
School.
1912, so it was, there were
Oh.
actually only in the two counties combined, there were just 3 high schools,
That's
Benton,
right.
Murray, and Hardin.
That's right.
And Hardin was the city school. Well, so your dad really believed in education.
He did. He tried to get me to go to Bowling Green. He'd sent my brothers to Bowling Green to take a
At the business university.
business university.
Uh-huh.
And brother graduated from there, and then he went went west. He was sent west,
Uh-huh.
and he died.
Well,
He married Ruby Lee, you know.
yes. Could you tell us anything about, just skipping back a second to the,
To the farm.
well, either the farm or maybe, did you ever go to a one-room country school?
Oh yes,
Well,
Old Bogus Schoolhouse.
Old Bogus Schoolhouse. Now
I
that,
walked from home there every day.
I take it that was somewhere between Dexter and Almo.
Well, it's off brand. It was Murray, on the Murray Highway. It went by our house at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Murray, when we went from Dexter by our home, and come out over on the right to Old Gilbert place.
I know
Okay.
exactly where that Gilbert place
That-
is.
The Clendillons and his half brother
Mm-hmm.
lived right at that corner where we turned.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we came out by right in front of Mr. T.D. Gilbert's house on the Murray and
Murray
and-
Benton Road, they called it.
Yeah,
Some
Murray
of them
Benton
did.
Road. That's what they call it. And it went through Wadesboro.
And that Mr. Clendenin had a couple of daughters, one of whom I believe married,
Skaggs.
Skaggs.
Was that who it was?
I think so.
Oh.
And then,
No, Dawson. Bertie Dawson and Beatty Dawson. Bertie married the Skaggs. And
Oh,
Beatty,
yes.
Beatty married the Clendenin.
Clendenin.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next generation, there was Alton Ross married one of the girls. And
Granddaughters of him.
her granddaughter, I guess, of the one you're
My
thinking
half.
about. And he was principal at Hardin and so on.
Well, Uncle Bud Dawson went all over the country singing. Shouting and singing was his.
Yes.
What he favored most. Well, anyway, now the Stewart graveyard was on our farm, right as the orchard between the house and that.
A lot of my relatives are buried there.
Sure not?
Oh, yes. My great-grandfather, Howell Edwards, is buried there, and his wife, Elia Cope Edwards, is buried there.
Well, that's right. I
And
remember.
my grandmother, who was Fanny Edwards Irvin, is buried there.
I remember some of those names.
One of my mother's brothers is buried there, Heron Irvin. So there are a good many of the, on my mother's side of the family,
That's right.
are buried there.
Well, of course, the Stewarts, a lot of them are buried there.
Hmm. I knew Manning Stewart real well, and I
But
guess
he's not the one that was kin to them. See, Stewart married one of Loman's aunts, I believe.
Hmm.
But I don't believe Manning might have been one of them. I don't know.
I think he was one of the family, and he
Mhm.
might not have been immediate.
They lived. Manning Stewart's people lived right on a creek down there, close to where we did.
Yeah. Now Manning Stewart told me once, in fact, and I have some proof of that through a book that was put out by the Callaway County Genealogical Society, that his great, I believe his great, or maybe there were two greats in it, grandfather, settled at Wadesboro, along with Bannister Wade and a fellow named John Irvin, who was my great
I remember the John
grandfather.
Irvin.
Well, probably the one you remember was my great grandfather.
Might have been.
His grandfather was named John Irvin. That gets a little confusing.
Yeah.
He's-
Well, Wadesboro was a big town around us, except Murray.
yeah.
Of course, we went to Murray twice a year, in the spring and in the fall,
Yeah.
to get the clothes that we needed. I wore, when I was a kid, just growing until I was 5 or 6 years old, I wore little overalls, boys' overalls. My dad wanted me to be a boy. And I never heard him call my name in my life.
What?
He called me Babe. I was always Babe to him, and that's what he called me.
Yeah, I always called you Babe. Well, that's another interesting sidelight, too. What, do you happen to remember any of your teachers that you had at Bogus School?
Oh, yes. One of them was Lois. Oh, one of them was Pat Beal. That was
Pat
one
Beal.
I went to.
Yes. Well, I know Pat Beal Jr. Is retired now. He was a vice president of the Bank of Murray.
Yes.
And let's see, I believe he married an Andrus girl from Dexter. And the Pat Beal you're talking about, I think, was his father.
That's right.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
there was then I went to Lois Waterfield.
Oh,
at Alma.
yes, yes. She, that's Harry Lee's mother.
Yeah.
She taught at Hardin one
Yeah,
time.
she
In fact,
did.
Harry Lee went to Hardin
She.
for a while.
That's right. I remember that. But those times, you get away from it, you can't remember a lot of the things.
Well, it's
You get as
hard.
old as I am.
And that's the reason we're trying to put all we can on this tape.
History.
Yeah. Because, if we don't, it'll be gone and lost one of these days.
Well, at Hardin, when I went to high school, when I went to Starry, before the whole building was torn away, made new one was built. I went that winter. My dad made me go after we moved to Hardin. I had to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
I went to school there at Hardin, in the old building. It was where the Dr. Caulfield house is, or was for a while.
Yes.
I don't know who lives there now.
I'm not sure either.
Seems to me that it burned not too long ago. But anyway, Lois taught at Hardin after 1 year after we went there. I know.
Well, tell us how you met your husband.
How I met my husband?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I met him at school.
He was going to school there
He
at
was going
Hardin.
to school there.
Uh-huh.
What time he worked part of the time, in my Ryan Miller store.
I see.
And then
That was one of the big general department stores.
yeah, then he moved over to the other store, and then he moved into the bank with Dave Booker.
Mm-hmm. So that's how he got started in banking with
That's
Mr.
how.
Booker in Hardin.
And he taught himself how to use a typewriter. He could write on a typewriter real well.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't go around hunting and punching. He just did it.
He just picked it up.
And he did it after he got through with working at the bank there at night.
Uh-huh.
But, he was 4 years older than I. Actually, 3 and some more. But
Mhm.
anyway, nearly 4. And, of course, he was going with bolder girls.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought I wanted him bad enough to fight for him.
So you went out.
I won out.
You were the winner.
That's right.
Yeah, well, and you had many happy years together.
Yes, we did. We enjoyed life together. He was a grand person.
Let me ask you, did he keep you from graduating from high school?
No, I graduated from high school,
Mm-hmm.
but I was in one of the bunch with Donald Hughes and the Garnet Jackson and several more of that kind. And I think there was one more girl.
Miss Castleberry, was she?
Two, yeah. Hunnis was one of them.
Uh-huh.
And
Hunnis Trevathan.
Hunnis Trevathan.
Yeah.
Now, she was of a different set of Trevathans from, I guess her grandfather and Lauren's grandfather might have been second or third cousin, somewhere along there.
They weren't immediate family,
Not
but
immediate, no.
yeah. Well, of course, I remember her because she has come every year to the Hardin reunion
Yes.
on the 4th of July
That's
weekend.
right.
All right. Anything else you can tell us about the early days in Hardin when you were there? The things you
Well, I
remember
remember
about
the first automobile that came through Hardin. Somebody out on the hill saw it coming, and they came running down through town, and the whole town the other turned out for it.
it. Well, that's enough to run for if you'd never seen one before, isn't
Oh,
it?
well, my mother's cousin, Mr. Clayton, that lived at Paducah, had one. He came out and took us all for a drive.
Did Loman have a car?
We had one as quick as we could, but we didn't have it for a long time.
Uh-huh. Did your dad have one?
My daddy had one. No, what was it? Begins with a B. I can't even think of the name of it.
Buick?
Briscoe.
Briscoe.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I have heard of Briscoes.
Well,
An unusual automobile, and apparently a good car that was made for many years in the United States. And like so many of the other 3,000 brands we've had, it went out of business.
it did.
Someone told me that you may have had a certain experience with the night riders. Do you remember anything about any incidents in that?
I remember I was scared to death one night. The farmers raised dark fire tobacco at that time. And Daddy heard of a new kind of tobacco. I don't know how he heard of it, but it was a light tobacco. And it seems that a lot of the people wanted cigarillos instead of cigarettes. And
Yes.
we didn't hear of a cigarette being rolled in, but they smoked cigars
Mm-hmm.
or smoked pipes. My daddy smoked a pipe most of the time, and cigars when he was not wanting to chew up something
Uh-huh.
ragged or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, there was a gang of boys that had heard of these night riders during the war.
Yes.
You remember it? Well, back in about 1901 and 2, a lot of the farmers, they took their tobacco to Mayfield, to dark fire tobacco. I mean, they sold, it was a place where they sold the tobacco to the highest winners for them to use.
Yeah.
So when this light fire came along, it seemed like there was some ladies wanted to smoke cigars. So they wanted that light fire to make those cigars for those women.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this what do you call it?
Loose leaf floor?
No, it's the floor where they sold tobacco to different companies that wanted to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And they sold it to high bidders. There's a great big building. I saw it once or twice at Mayfield. But anyway, they wanted this light fired. So Daddy went to Wadesboro and took his tobacco there. And they hung it on rafters in that great big old building down by the Spring Branch.
They were buying tobacco in Wadesboro then.
Yes.
Well,
They would buy it, or they would let you take it, and they would charge you for what they did to it. See,
that was close to this big Wadesboro spring.
right down at the foot of the hill.
I've been there many times.
They later had a horse shoeing business there, I think, or something else.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, they would put it up on rafters, and they would use sprinkling cans, and the men would climb up on rafters and sprinkle that tobacco with this, and then the steam would come from that fire to build under it.
Mm-hmm.
And it made it light looking.
Yeah.
And then the farmer could take it if he wanted to and take it on to Mayfield. They'd put it in hogsheads, great big barrels.
Yeah, prized it.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And took it to Mayfield and put it on the floor there. They sold it then.
Mm-hmm.
It was light fired.
Well,
it was golden color.
I'd never heard
went
that
with my
story
dad.
before.
Well, I went with my dad over there to see it. He took me one night,
Mhm.
late afternoon, to Wadesboro. And of course, you remember there was an old man lived up on the hill over there, the richest Croesus.
Mm-hmm.
You remember him?
Well, I'm not sure which.
Irvin, I believe, was his name.
Yes, there was a Hardin
Bill
Irvin.
Irvin. Billy Irwin.
Billy
Not
Irvin.
Irvin, which was it?
Well,
One of those, anyway.
most of those people in that area were IRVAN.
That's right.
That is my mother's name.
Well, Mr. Billy had a big mansion-like brick building home
Uh-huh.
over there. But we had to go through Wadesboro to get to Benton when we lived where we lived.
Yes. They hadn't built the present road that runs.
We'd turn out at Dexter and go toward Wadesboro. And we got to Wadesboro, then we'd
You
get
were
on
you
over
were on
to
the
Benton.
the Wadesboro Benton road.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's.
and there was a lot of people lived in Wadesboro at that time. It was a big booming place.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was 4 or 5 doctors. Old Dr. Covington, the man that delivered me.
Now, I remember him. We lived in Wadesboro when I was 5 years old. That is 1926. And Dr. Covington was still living. there at that time. And there was his son was
Euclid.
practicing in Hardin, Euclid, Covington, and he stayed there and then moved to Murray. He died as a fairly young man, the young
Yes,
Dr.
I know
Euclid
he did.
Covington. And he too married an Irvin,
He married
Katie
Katie.
Irvin.
Mhm.
Again, some of my mother's relations, they weren't
Well,
real close kin.
I talked to Nell Pace about some of this, and she was informing me that they were kin to her.
Yes. And of course, Irvin Hughes, his mother was an Irvin.
Yes.
And he was some kind of cousin to my mother
Well,
again.
he was doctor.
Yeah, he was physician there in Hardin. And of course, Louise Utley's father.
Yeah.
And there were two boys, I believe, Kelly and Donald.
That's right. Don was in the same class I was at school.
And
Kelly was younger.
Uh-huh. Yes, I remember Donald quite well, a pharmacist, and then he became a mail carrier. He was postmaster there at Hardin for a time.
Well, back to these night riders you better get.
All right, let's get those night riders.
Well, you remember North and South fought against each other. Well, there were some men that didn't go to war, and there's some that went to fight on the other side. So the night riders would finally decide that those men that didn't go needed punishment.
Mm-hmm.
So they go around. They were dressed in certain kind of coats that the women made for them, and put them on, and then they had this mask over their face.
Yeah.
And they went out and got these men and beat them up. And I think they killed a few. But these boys over there close to the river decided they wanted to see what fun it was to beat people up.
Mm-hmm.
And they used it as an excuse about the tobacco business, because every farmer had a tobacco barn. And they went out a few nights and tossed something in the barn and caught the barn afire. They'd have hay in the barn.
Mm-hmm.
And so they burned a lot of barns. We'd see them smoking and burning. From my house one night, we saw it.
That's pretty frightening, wasn't it?
Oh, I was scared silly. I was a kid,
Mhm.
about 4 or 5 years old, and I shivered and shook. And I even cried when Dad went to take the tobacco to help load it on the hogsheads to take it to Mayfield. I didn't want him to go. I was afraid the night riders would get after him even there.
They wanted you to sell just at a certain place. The
That's right.
association, I
That's
believe they
right.
called it.
Dark fire tobacco.
Yeah. And if you didn't
But
sell,
these were really renegades. They weren't for anything but what fun they got out of whipping people.
mm-hmm.
So they did that, and they roamed around a long time before they were caught. One of them got caught one night, or two of them together. I think they were cousins. I don't even know their names. And so they were punished, and that broke it up.
I know it was a rather frightening period, and you're the first person that I've been able to interview that remembered very much about it. So we appreciate your telling us that. All right, you and Loman married, and did you stay in Hardin very long?
We married in December the 24th, and then we moved to Dawson Springs when Margaret was about 3 months old. See, her
And Margaret's the oldest child.
Yes.
And you went there, so did he work in a bank there?
Yes, he was called to work in the bank at Dawson Springs. But a good friend of his that went around and checked on the bank's supplies,
Mm-hmm.
found how hard he was working there at the bank and working at nights even to keep it running. And he told him about this place at Dawson Springs and some other place.
He got a raise.
He got a raise. He went there, I think it's for $75 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And we went there the year that big snow was on the ground, and golly, it was hot, deep. I had on boots, and they come to the top of those boots, walking along in the snow. I had to pull my feet out of them.
1917-18, that winter. Yeah.
And Margaret was little, and we moved into an old hotel there, Dawson Springs Hotel. And an old lady, and she was sweet as she could be. She helped me through. Margaret had to walk the floor with her. She had crying spells and colic all I don't know how long. But in the summer.
Babies seem to have the colic some, don't they?
They do.
Yeah. You
Mine
got-
especially. Well, anyway, we lived there then till we moved back to Benton,
Mhm.
and we stayed here all.
Now, Mr. Lohman was invited to come back to Benton. There was a new bank established here, wasn't
Yes.
there?
They hadn't been going but a little while, and Judge Price and Mr. Clint Smith, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
were the ones that interviewed him mostly. And he came back. I believe his salary was $60 or $65 a month here and for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'd raise him each year.
Well, he gradually did a little better.
He gradually got to be president of the bank, and I
Yeah.
was gloriously happy for him because he was always a person that wanted to learn.
And that was his goal, of course, to improve and do as well as he could.
He was the one that got the farmers enthused about having the farm bureau. And
Yes.
he was the one that insisted that the bank buy a calf for the boys that promised to take care of it and raise it into a cow. And when they sold it, then they used to pay back what the bank had paid for the calf in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And that started a lot of boys doing something besides running around.
Taught them management principles and responsibility and so on. Well, he certainly did a number of wonderful things. I know he was in the Young Men's Progress Club when they republished the old Southern Harmony songbooks. And
He loved that old Southern Harmony singing, and I never did care much about it because I couldn't sing it.
well, I guess he sang about as much as anybody. He used to lead singing for revivals all over the county.
All over the county.
Mhm.
Every time. Sometimes he's the one got them to say that everywhere once in a while one would clash with another one, and they'd both want him to lead the singing. He said, I can't be two places at the same time. You've got to change your times instead of mine.
Yeah.
So,
And then later years he was appointed to various commissions and boards and
oh yes, I
attended
was
the
with him
State Bankers Association. You'd go there, I
every
imagine.
year. We went to, he was on that board that a good friend of his was governor, and he wanted to do something for him. He appointed him on the board to see us prisoners, and he'd go at each prison.
Mm-hmm.
He'd have to visit. He visited this one over here, and I went with him. And there was a huge man over there that was had to have a special bed made to sleep in. And he and his wife, she was a little tiny-looking woman, and we went to eat dinner with them. But they had their meals served by the prisoners. Well, I didn't know it, and Loman didn't know it either. And then a big black man came in serving the dinner for us.
Mm-hmm.
And when he went out, Loman said something about the prisoners were out in the back marching up and down, and they had a band that played.
They had their own band.
And their own
Yeah.
band.
Mhm.
And he said something about it. He said, well, that man serving at the table here is one of the prisoners. And I jumped.
That scared you when you heard that.
It did. But the awfulest thing that happened to us was when we went to the prison for the women. I think it's Pee Wee Valley. I'm not
Yes,
sure.
there is a woman's prison at Pee Wee Valley.
Well, we went there to serve they served us meals, and after we got through eating, and there was a woman marching around down there looking silly, and they were at their, well, I guess they were free time, a little bit of free time
Yes.
they got. So the woman came up, and the woman said, well, I heard down at one of these prisons that there was a woman here that had killed her mother, and cut her up. The man said, yes, it's happened. It happened. Well, that woman was out there dancing around, parading around. A lot of them were trying to show off in front of us because it was their free time.
Mm-hmm.
So Lois said, well, is she here? He said, yeah. Right out there. And he pointed to her. He said, that's her. Well, she was out there dancing around. And he said, she not only killed her, said she cut her up and cooked a piece of her and made her husband eat some of it before she'd ever tell him it was actually part of his mother.
Oh.
Well, I got up and left the table. I couldn't stand anymore. I said, I can't eat another bite. I just can't. And the man laughed at me. He said, well, says she's not crazy. I said, well, is she crazy? He said, no, she wasn't crazy. Said
Yes.
she's not crazy now. Said we
But-
have to watch her every minute.
But cannibalism is pretty rare kind
Oh,
of thing, isn't it?
I got sick in my stomach, Ray. I couldn't stand it. Their idea of
all
anybody being
have-
that mean and being allowed to be walking around out there with the rest of them.
It does get to you, I'm sure. Well, you know, this half hour is just going awfully fast. Do you have anything else you'd like to bring out before we go off? Do you have some notes there you'd like to?
No, nothing. I just wanted to be sure that I got some of that fire tobacco where you could know what it was.
Well, let me ask you in the minute or two that remains then, what was Benton like when you came here? Do you remember any of the
Well-
stores, or did they have the present courthouse, for example? I think it burned in
It burned.
1915, the original one.
It burned and burned some of the things up. Well, the Murray Courthouse burned. We saw it burning, as I told you, I
Mhm.
think.
Mm-hmm.
Or the fire even our farm down there. But
House, for example, I think it burned in
It burned.
1915, the original one.
it burned and burned some of the things up. Well, the Murray Courthouse burned. We saw it burning, as I told you, I
Mhm.
think.
Mm-hmm.
Or the fire even our farm down there. But some of the things that, Benton didn't burn plumb down, but it messed it up, so it had to be
Rebuilt.
rebuilt. But I went to some of the singings, but the most interesting thing that happened to me when I was a kid, I didn't care anything about the singing, and it was hot up there, and I sat down in the courtyard. That's the last time I came to a big singing. I watched some deaf and dumb people talking,
Mm-hmm.
and that enthralled me. I just stood there, looked at them, and then I sat down, and they were just talking and laughing, having the biggest time.
In
Well,
sign language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one day I stayed at home after we moved to Hardin, and Dad and Mother and Laurie and Bess came to Benton. Bess was this little thing. She was born at Hardin. Well, anyway, they came, and as they went back home, it rained sparks of fire, rained down on their top of their car.
Well, that was an unusual occurrence.
Well, it was something in the air.
Mhm.
We heard about it later, but it scared me. I saw it when went out to look, and it looked like a sort of like a rainbow. When it was red looking, there wasn't any colors in it but red.
Mm-hmm.
And I also saw Halley's Comet.
Halley's Comet, and it's due back about, what, 86, is it?
I've forgotten for sure.
It's before too terribly long.
Yeah,
It
we were living down in Benton at that place where the big concrete walls around it. That's where we moved. Of course, we worked it over, and
It's was that 1915? I believe. I'm just trying to search my memory.
I don't know for sure. It seemed like to me it's about 1916 or 17. I'm not
Okay,
right sure.
long in there,
hmm
in that area.
I know we were standing out in the front yard, and somebody said it was going over. And but another thing we saw was that, you remember that light that went through the sky? It looked like a kite.
Was that way back, and they thought
that-
the world was ending, and it was the aurora borealis from the northern lights? That happened sometime around World War I, didn't it? Or a little after?
No, that was after we moved to Benton. We saw this one.
Uh-huh.
We were going on a trip somewhere and saw it going through the sky, and it was scary. It looked kind of like a kite with a tail on it.
Maybe that was one of the first of the satellites.
That's what it was, satellite.
Telstar. Yeah, I remember that now.
We saw how this comet over there after we moved to Benton in the front yard.
Well, congratulations. I wish we had more time, but you know.
Well, if I were to get started on old times, you never would get through.
Maybe we ought to make another tape sometime.
Well, it's all right. I hope that I've said something that people will know how things were a long time ago.
You have. You've said a lot, and we appreciate it. My name's Ray Mofield. We've just interviewed Mrs. Valley Combs Trevathan, And she's a very spry young lady who'll soon have a birthday in February. She was
Yep.
born in 1898, so you can figure that out.
I'll be 85.
She'll be 85 years old. And we've been producing this for the State Bureau of Libraries Archives in Frankfort, Kentucky, for the Pogue Oral History Library at Murray State University, and a copy provided by WCBL for the Marshall County Libraries in Benton, Hardin, and Calvert City.